Davis.
Okay. That's it?
That's it for me. Everybody else good?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yep.
Keep up the good work.
All right. I don't know if anybody's on the line for Miss Pam. Go ahead.
Actually, Miss Pamela Brownell actually called in sick this morning, and Jennifer Daniels is at a training session, so she's unable to attend as well. But on her report, it's only informational items. So if you all
Okay.
have any questions, she asks that you please email her.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Eric Lovestrand, Extension Office Director, would be next.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I do not have anything for you beyond my written report this morning.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Eric? Mr. Eric, as we continue to try to get back to what we would consider normal, has 4-H still been able to meet, or has that been hindered still?
Yes, the university has basically given some protocol for like inside meeting things, but they're doing outside meetings without any restrictions. And Arctic Club is working on practices, and we have a new cargo trailer for them that they're outfitting to be able to store and transport all of the equipment that we've been able to get through the NRA grant program. So they're moving along very nicely.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear it. Anyone else have any questions or concerns for Mr. Eric? Mr. Eric, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right. Mr. Ted Musteller, Interim Airport Manager, you're up next, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Most of my items today are informational. I do have, Michael has, or maybe Aaron, I don't know who has it, but we have requests for signatures on several grants that will be coming up. I have discussed with Howard and Fonda about our maintenance situation for the airport equipment. And I don't know if the package came, I don't think they came in yesterday as were scheduled, but as soon as they do come in and are installed, we will do a walkthrough with the engineer on that. If there's nothing else, any questions for me that I could answer?
Go ahead, sir.
Ted, didn't we need to be thinking about points of contact, updating our points of contact for FDOT, FDOT Aviation Department relative to our airport?
Yes, sir, they've been bugging me about that.
So should we be thinking about that now?
Yep, I thought that's something that was already supposed to have been taken care of. Without Mr. Morone being here, I can't answer that. I know we've had that discussion already, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. I will say, Mr. Ted, while you're here,
Yes, sir.
and Mr. Starkey about, if it could be possible, about stole my thunder, but if you notice, Commissioners, when he was talking about stuff at the ARPC, the Regional Planning Council level,
Yes, sir.
last meeting I had kind of let you guys know that they were going to be putting something together for this regional planning grant for Build Back Better. It's anywhere from $25 to $100 million. Well, so we had the discussions back and forth, several of them, with Mr. John Collins from AvCon. We submitted what would be needed to extend our southeast to northwest runway to make it 8,000 foot long, to make it thicker and harder so it could actually land planes like FedEx and UPS, and the appropriate aprons and everything with it. It's about a $30 million price tag, but that was included in the grant that the ARPC is submitting today to the federal government. So it'll be all or nothing. If everybody else gets what they're asking for, we'll get what we're asking for. I
Fantastic.
want to make sure the board's aware that that submittal did actually happen
Good.
today.
Great. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you. Thanks, Commissioner.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And Commissioners, if I could, I would like to go ahead, while Ted is in the room, to go ahead and cover the airport items on Mr. Michael Marone's report, since he's not here today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Item number 21A, airport grants. Below are 3 Florida Department of Transportation's FDOT public. Let's see, based on the board's directive to Mr. John Collins of AvCon, the board's request was to divide available grant funding between a stormwater and drainage improvement project, an obstruction removal project, and the replacement of the airfield vault backup generator at the airport. The 4th item is the Federal Aviation Administration notification of available funding for the apron rehabilitation project. Item I, the first FDOT PTGA is a $750,000 stormwater and drainage improvement project at the airport. This project will address underground water infiltration, which is compromising the pavement around the inlets to stop continued damage to the concrete apron, water infiltration, which is creating voids in the infield, and stormwater runoff that is flowing from the north side of the airport onto private property. Board action to authorize the chairman's signature on the $750,000 PTGA for stormwater and drainage improvements at the airport.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Lockley and Commissioner Bolt. Any discussion before we vote? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That's unanimous.
Item 2, the second $150,000 public transportation grant agreement is for obstruction removal at the airport. As described in the attached map, obstructions will be removed from runway protection zones and runway visibility zones to maintain the 20-to-1 approach slopes to enhance safety at the airport and meet FDOT licensing requirements. Board action to authorize the chairman's signature on the $150,000 PTGA for obstruction removal at the airport.
So move.
We have a motion by Commissioner Bolt. Second by 2, Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Lockley.
Comment, please.
Go ahead, sir.
All this obstruction clearance that's going on is on airport property. Is that correct?
That's according to the map, yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Item 3, the third public transportation grant agreement for $100,000 is to design and replace the airfield vault backup generator. The existing airfield vault generator is beyond its useful life and in need of replacement. This generator is critical to keeping the airfield lights operational during periods of power outages such as hurricanes. Board action to authorize the chairman's signature on the $100,000 PTGA for design and replacement of the airfield vault backup generator.
So move.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Bolt, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's a 5-0 vote.
Okay, and item 4, last week FAA notified Mr. John Collins that they have $600,000 that they would like to add to the current FDOT funding for the airport rehabilitation project. FDOT has already provided $1,379,711 for this project. However, this will only address 1/3 of the needed apron rehabilitation. The formal application will be submitted in April 2022. Board action to authorize the chairman's signature on the FAA's $600,000 pre-application for the apron rehabilitation project.
So moved.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Lockley,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bolt. Any discussion?
Yeah, now that will it, if they get this, will that take care of it?
No.
That's not gonna take care of it.
No.
It'll only address about 1/3 of it, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? That's unanimous. Is that it, Ms. Arian? And just another point of clarification I forgot to mention earlier. So this application's been submitted by the Regional Planning Council is like a pre-application. So even if it does get approved, it has to go through a whole nother process where the numbers will be refined and more definite. And there is a 20% match, but since it's would be about 2 or 3 years away before it could be awarded and started, Mr. Collins thinks that's something we would be able to apply to DOT for in his discussions with them about something down the road. So just so the board's aware, there would be approximately 5 to 6 million coming from FDOT to help with that project if it gets approved.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Ted.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, Mr. David Walker, Williams CEO.
Thank you, Commissioners. David Walker, Williams, CEO. First of all, thank you all for all that you all do for the county and residents and visitors here in the county. I have 2 action items here today. The first one, Franklin County Medical Service. Franklin County EMS is seeking the approval to schedule the purchase of an ambulance with base equipment once per year. Currently, we have 3 primary trucks on the road averaging 60,000 miles per year. This schedule will streamline financial planning, Franklin County EMS, ambulance operations. The schedule will be initiated with the purchase of a Ford F-350 diesel with additional medical equipment included. The total price for this purchase is $305,530.15. The estimate delivery time would be 6 to 9 months from the date of the order. Upon completion of the vehicle registration, EMS plans to retire the 2016 Chevrolet, which currently has 20 to 16,000 miles. We're asking for a motion to approve the yearly purchase of an ambulance with base equipment for Franklin County EMS, starting with the purchase of a Ford F-350 diesel, including medical equipment, for the total purchase price of $305,530.15.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Lockley,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bolt. Commissioner Ward, did you
And
also
Ward.
second?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and Commissioner Ward. Any discussion before we vote?
Yes,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
go ahead.
David, a lot of times we've got grants to buy ambulances.
Mm-hmm.
What you're stating here is you want the county to fund a new ambulance every year, and we just not apply for the grants anymore?
No. You
How's
still
that gonna work?
Well, you still can apply for the grants, but we really want to do a schedule. We don't want to come every 5 or 10 years looking for a new ambulance. We keep it on schedule,
Right.
but we definitely will continue to look for grants, to fund the ambulances.
So will you come back to the commission before you order another ambulance every year and let us know where we're at as far as grants?
Yes, yeah.
50% match or let us know what's going on?
Yeah, we definitely can, Louis, we have something to say still for. But yeah, we definitely will have Louis come back before you all to let you know, hey, we apply for certain grants. We didn't get it, we did get it, this is where we are at this particular time. You notice the last ambulance that the Franklin County the county bought, came out of our hospital CARES Act money. So we looked at grant money for that particular funding process. So this is something that, we looking at the trust fund now, the capital outlay money to fund this, but we definitely will look for other grants opportunities.
So this particular ambulance will come out of the trust fund?
Yes, correct.
But we will keep looking for grants and stuff yearly,
Yeah.
annually, and you will keep the board abreast on that?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. We always want to try to diversify our funding no matter what we're doing.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
Obviously, with us being so rural, excuse me, a lot of miles are put on these ambulances by going to Bay County or transporting patients to Leon County and Tallahassee to TMH or other hospitals. So, I'm sure you do rack a lot of miles up on the ambulances, and obviously we need good equipment and good, dependable vehicles. Lord forbid we transport a critical patient to one of these hospitals and ambulance breaks down. So it's very important, I feel personally, to ensure that we have adequate equipment, adequate ambulances to do that.
Yeah, you're correct about that, because oftentimes we even travel to Duval County, out of the county. When COVID-19 was at its height here in the region, all of our regional hospitals was filled, and we had to transport patients outside, all the way to Duval County, Alabama, Georgia. So we do, the vehicles definitely put on a lot of miles. And Lord, if I'm saying anything.
That's 100% correct.
Mr. Lewis, didn't you say the last time I was asking you about ambulance and the way things are working, didn't you, I'm trying to remember the number, but didn't you say that our ambulance trip averages about 52 miles a trip?
So the average loaded miles, which is the miles where we pick up the patient, averages 44 miles. That's including all of our trips to Weems. A round trip to Tallahassee, if we do a transfer from Weems, is 160 miles. So it's right at 79 miles there and then 79 back.
Yeah. A lot of transport, that's the reason I asked.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is a lot of transport. Any more discussion? Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, can you educate me about the CARES money that I think we've got a bunch in our banking account, and I know there are important quality assurances on how that money is to be spent. Does this ambulance qualify for any of that CARES money to be spent on buying them?
Yes. The CARES Act money is to prevent, prepare, and treat and respond to COVID-19. So anything that you're doing with that, that money can be spent for that. Now, every rural hospital in the United States got CARES Act money, every rural hospital. And the federal government did that because they know that the pandemic surges were coming and they wanted to stand up rural hospitals. And so if you're doing anything to prevent, treat, respond, prepare for COVID-19, you can use those funds there. We're right now entering a provider portal. I think we probably have submitted that already, to get that money released to us fully, the $3 million, within our bank account. I have Susan, our new CFO, Susan Daniels, with me, here. And there's some other money that's coming out. The federal government has opened up another provider portal for rural hospitals, so we can, show the money that we're spending, during this particular pandemic, and we may get some possible reimbursement, some additional reimbursement. I think with COVID-19, it really showing the federal government that you really got to invest in rural hospitals here. Yep. And a lot of our rural hospitals really have been hurting. A lot of them been closing throughout the United States of America. Texas alone has seen an increase in closures of hospitals just because of the pandemic. And so with our county support, with our federal support, state support, as well as our own financial streams that we're bringing into the hospital, we want to keep our hospital open. But the CARES Act funding, in a nutshell, is to prevent, respond, treat, and prepare for COVID-19.
Does any of that money qualify to buy another ambulance?
Yes, it does. But it does, qualify, but, I don't know if we want to go there right now with our own internal budget, because that money that we've already spent, right now is going through the provider portal, for the federal government to certify everything that we spend it on. Yeah. But I just think now, the best thing to do is take it out of the trust fund, because the hospital already spent, CARES Act money on a new ambulance.
Okay. I see the strategy.
Okay, is that it for discussion, Commissioners?
What the life expectancy mileage-wise on an ambulance?
We normally see once the ambulance hits 200,000 miles, the maintenance cost goes up substantially. So we try to have our primary trucks. We have the 3 primary trucks, East Point, Appalachian, and Caravel. We try to make them a backup truck no later than 200,000 miles if we're able. And then we try to get another 100,000 out of them as a backup truck.
Right. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Good. God bless.
Thank you, Commissioners. Second action item, the Wings Board of Directors has recommended Ms. Dolores Kroom to fill the vacant at-large hospital board seat. Ms. Kroom is a longtime resident of Franklin County and lives in Apalachicola. Board action to appoint Ms. Dolores Kroom to the at-large hospital board seat.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve by Commissioner Ward,
Second.
second by Commissioner Bolt. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you. And lastly, I just want to introduce again Susan Daniels. She's our new Chief Financial Officer here at the hospital. We so grateful to have her here at Lyon. It's brought her in. We've interviewed her, but she's going to be a great asset to our hospital. And once again, thank you all for all that you do for the residents and visitors of Franklin County. Sometimes a lot of things that you do go unnoticed, and but I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
Glad to have you.
Welcome to Appalachia.
Thank you, Richard.
Show me the money.
That's right.
Attorney Schuler, we can't start public hearings until the scheduled time, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay. Ms. Bankston, do you have everything ready to go to our planning and zoning reports, or do you need a couple of minutes?
Nope, I'm ready.
All right, please proceed then.
Let me my screen together. Y'all see that pretty good?
Probably as good as we're gonna see it. You're good.
Okay. All right, the first item I have is the critical shoreline applications. The first one is going to be 39 Carousel Terrace. Consideration of request to construct 2 dock additions to an existing dock, 108 square foot dock, a 160 square foot terminal platform, and square foot staircase and one 18 square foot jet ski lift. This is in Alligator Point, and the request was submitted by Gene Strickland, agent for William Hackney. The state exemption has been received, and the board recommends approval contingent upon federal permit or exemption.
So move.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's a unanimous vote.
Okay. Second, I have another one on Carousel Terrace. This one is 19 Carousel Terrace. And they're requesting to construct a 6 by 30 single-family dock with a 12 by 24 slip with lift and 102 linear foot retaining seawall and a floating stability barrier. This is Holiday Beach, Alligator Point, submitted by Docks for Less, agent for Ryan Lawson. State exemption has been received. The board is recommending approval contingent upon federal permit or exemption and contingent upon revised site plan without meeting the 25-foot setback requirement.
So move approval.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt,
Second.
second by Commissioner Lockley. Any discussion? Courtney, I have a question. Says contingent upon revised site plan, so that's something different than what they submitted, meeting the 25-foot setback requirement. Other than this site plan, what else is going to be done to make sure they're meeting the setback requirement?
It's just the site plan. From what we were seeing, they had enough room to kind of squeeze it. They had, I think 20 feet on one side and then like 15 on the other, so they can move it to where they can meet that 25-foot setback, and it's the county's requirement, not the state's requirement that they were
Okay.
missing.
But
So
I
the
guess my
board
question
wants-
is going to be, so we receive a set of plans with the setback showing it correct, but does that mean that we're going to have, do we have what's in place to make sure that it's built correctly in that setback?
I would
Or
have
away
to work
from
with
that setback?
Steve.
Okay. That's,
I'll
I
have
mean,
to work with-
we're putting it on us when we're wording it that way is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
We're saying that their site plan still needs to be revised, but it still got put forward.
and I asked them if they wanted to table it until they bring back.
Right.
So you guys are welcome to do that since you guys have the final vote,
Yeah.
but the board wanted to just send it forward.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. It brought a question in my mind. That's the only reason I'm asking.
You know, I'll go
Okay.
ahead and rescind my motion, because I know we need quality control.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to
But
see
that's
the
entirely
specs.
up to you, Commissioner. I wouldn't,
I
you know.
appreciate you pointing that out.
yeah. All right, so Commissioner Bolt has withdrew his motion. So what is the pleasure of the board then? If we're not going to approve it, we're not going to deny it, or we plan on tabling it, what do you want to do?
I'd like to make a motion to table it.
Okay. All right, but Courtney, I want to ask you a question, or you, Attorney Schuler, maybe you can help us. If we do table this, will that send it back to P and Z with a revised site plan to be approved first, or how do we need to do this?
That would be the preferred, because they're looking, a revised site plan by definition is a new site plan.
Right. So
P and Z would need to, as your advisory board, look at that
Right.
revised plan, make a decision, a recommendation, I should say, and then send it on to this board for final decision.
Okay, so we would be tabling it and asking them to bring what's needed back to the P and Z board?
With whatever revisions that
Right.
the applicant is intending to make.
Okay, is that what you're?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
just making sure we're on the same page.
Thank you.
All right, so we are, by Commissioner Bolt's motion, tabling this and asking them to bring all the revised documents back to P and Z for them to consider for this, that didn't come to this board. Okay, so
Yes, sir.
that's the motion.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second by Commissioner Ward. Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's a 4-0 unanimous vote with who's in the room.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
The last thing I have is for a preliminary plat application. This is consideration of a request for a sketch plat approval for 2.1 acre parcel land lying in section 12, township 7, range 4 west, Glenart Village, The subdivision will be named Miller's Landing. It will consist of 6 lots meeting the minimum requirement of 14,000 square feet, each for R1A zoning. This request was submitted by Melinda Carroll and Vicki Williams, applicants. The board has recommended approval. And if you guys can remember, this is one that we approved for rezoning, so now she's doing her sketch plat.
I've got, Mr. Chairman, I've got a question.
Go ahead.
It says subdivision here. I guess they're trying to put multiple units. When we do a subdivision, Attorney Schuler, I might can ask you this question. The big thing with subdivisions for me personally is drainage, proper drainage. Will they, is this something they'll have to do when they build whatever subdivision they're gonna be building here?
Commissioner, for commercial property, that would be an absolutely true statement. I'm not certain what requirements Mr. Carrington is requiring on residential in terms of drainage. Is there any representative for the applicant here?
Not that I know of.
Well, and I'd like to also remind the board that this is a preliminary sketch plat approval.
Yes.
This is not the final sketch plat.
I just wanna make
And I
sure-
believe Mark does make them turn all that stuff in before they can even go for their next sketch plat or their final, and before he signs off on it to be
Thank you.
filed.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Also, in order to increase density beyond 1 unit per acre, they need to have water and sewer also. And that's one check that's not on their checklist for information required for sketch plat approval. There's no check on that. So can you tell us what's going on with that as far as potable water? And how sewer and stormwater, which is what Commissioner Ward is talking about, will be handled? That's not checked. So what's the deal with that? Every other box has a check on it.
I think she's waiting to hear back from the water and sewer department, if I'm not mistaken. She's been working with Mark hand in hand with this, so he may have more information than I do.
So I would say, Courtney, based on some of the questions the commission has brought up here today, before they get anywhere close to a final sketch plat approval, they definitely have to answer that question.
Correct.
Yeah, because it's been brought up by over half of the board, so.
Mhm.
that's
And you know
something
what,
that needs
Mr.
to
Chairman, I
be
would
addressed.
recommend a motion to table then, to have those two
Okay.
questions answered by the board that have been asked.
And just another reinforcing, Mr. Chairman, with regard to drainage, I think that's a very important quality assurance issue. We just had a flooding crisis that occurred in Kentucky Avenue area in Lanark Village this past couple of weeks, and I really think that drainage is, and decision for that is almighty in these things, so that should be tabled till we see that too.
Okay. We don't currently have any kind of motion on the table, do we?
I'll
Nobody's
make a
made a
motion to
motion,
table this
correct?
pending additional information
Okay,
on the two subjects we just discussed.
okay.
I'll second.
All right. So, Ms. Gay, I want to clarify, we did not have any motions until just now, correct? Thank you. Too much discussion, I kind of got lost. I want to make sure we're doing things properly. So we have a motion to table for this information to be presented and brought forward to this preliminary sketch plat by Commissioner Bolt and seconded by Commissioner Ward. Any more discussion before we vote, Commissioners?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I wasn't in on it, but this came through planning zone.
It did, but the question that came up, Commissioner, was on their actual checklist of stuff for sketch plat approval. They did not check the box saying that they know they have availability of potable water and sewer and how the storm water is going to be handled. So that's why we're recommending tabling it until they get us that information.
But do they got it in their bylaws, do the planning zone got it in their bylaws, so they'll know how to handle it?
That I can't speak to.
I'm not
He's
quite.
saying we're planning and zoning and how to handle it if we table it.
Yes, sir, they absolutely, sure. I mean, just like the last item that was tabled and sent back to P and Z, that's what the board, I believe, is intending here, is for P and Z to require that information or get an answer to those two questions, review it, and then send it on to this board with a recommendation.
Well, the reason I asked, I think that should, but, you know, this, stuff like that shouldn't coming from the board if it's not filled out
Yeah.
all the way, and, but if they know it,
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a note for record. I'm not trying to be, you know, I respect our Board of Adjustment, our Planning and Zoning boards, and they are there, and I typically do agree with them, but I know with a certain subdivision in East Point, I don't think the stormwater drainage was addressed, or I don't know how that worked out, but obviously there's a big issue with retaining water, and I just want to ensure that as we move forward with any new development within the county, and I trust our county staff too to look into things as well, but it's an issue when they don't address this and then they build, you know, lots and houses and things, and there's no proper drainage, and then it becomes a problem for the board in the future when we have constituents calling and concerned with water on their property and lakes on their property and such. So that's just my opinion.
Oh, it winds up, Commissioner, it winds up being similar to discussions I've had with people that have commercial properties in my district and that had submitted stormwater plans, but they don't have stormwater on their property, or it's not retained on their property. It's going other places, but it's not staying on their property. So yes, at the end of the day, that's why I brought up the thing about the dock earlier. What are we doing to make sure everything looks good, but it's got to be good when it's finished?
That's right.
So they have to follow through and do the plans they submitted to this board.
Mr.
So-
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
to add what you've just said too, when we make these kinds of concerns and we're looking for quality assurance, ultimately that is in the favor of a more valuable asset to the property owner.
Yes.
And they are following set standards of practice. Someday, when they get an appraisal of that property, they're going to be complimented by the work that they did today.
Mm-hmm.
well, that's what I was trying to say, if they do it in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
when it goes through P&Z and all that stuff here, when it comes through here, it shouldn't be no problem.
Yes, sir.
It shouldn't never get to the table until that's took care.
Yes, sir.
That's what I was trying to explain.
Yes, sir.
I mean, what I asked was it in their bylaw, make sure it's took care before it get here.
Any more discussion before we vote? Again, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous vote.
I
All right,
think that's
Ms.
it. Other
Courtney.
than that, I just have my zoning administrator report.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Aaron, do you want to help me with this one? We did a workshop at the end of the planning and zoning board meeting for the FRDAP, Florida Recreational Development Assistant Program, and Aaron presented that.
Yep, there were actually, there were 2 grants for consideration, the St. George Island Playground improvements at Lighthouse Park, and also the Vrooman Park Ball Field improvements, and this is just simply an approval of the minutes that were taken from those meetings.
Okay. So there's no action we need to take?
Yeah, there's no action that they need to take to accept that, is that, Courtney?
Yes.
Okay. Courtney, that does it for your report?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, thank you very much. And let's take about a 5-minute recess.
Follow the Reaper as he guides you to the ghosts of Apalachicola past. Come hear creepy, funny, and historical facts as local community actors present Appalachia's Living Dead, a downtown historic ghost stroll, October 22nd and 23rd, starting at 7 p.m. You'll meet characters from Apalachicola's colorful past as you stroll the streets in the downtown commercial district. The tour will start at the Chamber of Commerce at the corner of Avenue E and Commerce Street. Tickets are $10 for adults and $5 for kids 12 and under. Come hear some history, have a few laughs, and some scares. Appalachia's Living Dead, a downtown historic ghost stroll. Be there if you dare.
In regards to the services that we offer, so we take care of individuals from birth to death. So if you have a newborn, please bring them in, come see us. We'd love to take care of them. If you're early on and you need a school physical, we'd love to take care of you. Young children typically are doing rather well, and we check in on their development and kind of leave them alone and let them grow like they're supposed to. We talk about diet, preventative medicine as well, but usually young children are doing quite well. If we're in the middle of life and we have medical conditions or we want to start our preventative medicine, we'd love to take care of you. So my goal is to consider the big picture, make sure all of those specialists who specialize in the organ systems integrate that appropriately and are considering the big picture.
Evening of theater and something creepy's lurking in the dark. You see some sights that almost stop your heart. You try not to laugh, but you can't help it because the Panhandle Players will have some wicked fun on Friday, October 29th when they present live from Appalach, the Halloween edition. It will be a scream of an evening of adult comedy, skits, and an audience costume contest with a $100 cash prize. You can get tickets online at panhandleplayers.com or at the door. This event is funded in part by the Franklin County TDC.
Hi, I'm Kara Landis. I'm a professional realtor in love with St. George Island. When my husband and I and our dogs moved here in 2002, it was the beginning of an adventure that has never grown old in a community that is amazing. If you're thinking about moving to St. George Island or investing in our world-class real estate, then this community will be as important to you as the sand and surf.
Well, Kara to me is much more than an agent. She's become a friend, and since we bought the house, we've needed work done, and she knows everybody there is that can help us with that.
One of the key elements for the historical growth and value of St. George Island real estate is the fact that it's a great place to vacation and to live. The beauty of the Gulf of Mexico with its white sand beaches and blue sky has always been a magnet for me. It was love at first sight. As your realtor, I can help educate you on the various aspects of buying and owning coastal properties. From taxes to coastal setback lines to where to find the best oysters, it's all part of being your realtor.
Too often our friends tell us of it being a hardship to buy a house, and the agent was gone as soon as the closing. We've had quite the opposite experience with Kara.
If you're looking to buy or sell real estate on St. George Island, I'd love to work with you. Please call or text me at 850-653-7753.
Working towards various telehealth programs where we might be able to sit down and talk to specialists one-on-one so we can get on the same page with clinical direction, wound care, endocrine, nutritionists, psychiatry. We have a lot of interesting ideas that we'd like to implement as soon as possible, and we're working towards doing that on a day-to-day basis.
Reaper as he guides you to the ghosts of Apalachicola past. Come hear creepy, funny, and historical facts as local community actors present Appalachia's Living Dead, a downtown historic ghost stroll, October 22nd and 23rd starting at 7 p.m. You'll meet characters from Apalachicola's colorful past as you stroll the streets in the downtown commercial district. The tour will start at the Chamber of Commerce at the corner of Avenue E and Commerce Street. Tickets are $10 for adults and $5 for kids 12 and under. Come hear some history, have a few laughs, and some scares. Appalachia's Living Dead, a downtown historic ghost stroll. Be there if you dare. Evening of theater and something creepy's lurking in the dark. You see some sights that almost stop your heart. You try not to laugh, but you can't help it because the Panhandle Players will have some wicked fun on Friday, October 29th when they present live from Appalach, the Halloween edition. It will be a scream of an evening of adult comedy, skits, and an audience costume contest with a $100 cash prize. You can get tickets online at panhandleplayers.com or at the door. This event is funded in part by the Franklin County TDC.
Tiffin, and welcome to my store. I've been in the furniture business in East Point for over 25 years, and this is our fabulous store. Look at all these accessory pieces we have. And these umbrella fabrics are just terrific. This is a good example. We probably have 50 sofas on the floor in umbrellas. They're so advanced in their fabric, they won't fade, and they're just real easy to clean. You need to clean them with bleach. This is a product we've been selling for over 20 years. It's called Polywood. It has marine grade stainless steel screws, and you can't wear it out. It's guaranteed 20 years outdoors. I've been in print for 50 years, and I do all kind of art. And we're gonna just show you a lot of our paintings and prints. And my daughter Lacey has these prints. We got some stack paintings of St. George, and we'll show you those in Apalachicola, showing different businesses and places of interest. And we have those little prints that you can come in. Great souvenirs for tourists. As Royce flew in on his drone, he flew over our big log out front. His name's Big Charles, and Mr. Golden pulled that log 5 or 6 years ago out of the river, 30 or 40 feet deep, and it in the mud, so it's the best example of any piece of cypress that's ever come out of the Apalachicola River. This is an example of how these logs end up. This log we've dated is around 2,000 years old. It takes us 5 years to dry these logs. We have to air dry them, split them to get it to this stage. So they're magnificent. We just love these things. One other thing we do here at Tiffin's, we offer a complete line of window treatments from Home Renovations and Shutters, a big wholesaler. So we got everything from shutters to the latest things here, window treatments. Here we have Audra. She's our store manager, does a terrific job. Amy, who sells and does all of our technology. Angie, who's an interior designer. And these girls can come to your home and we can give you advice. You know what to do, there's no charge for it. And then we have Bobby, who's our table maker, and he also helps a little to living furniture. And we got Nate and Glenn who deliver furniture. They never break anything. They're just wonderful. They've been with me for many, many years. They're just great guys. So we're going to give you the best possible service at Tiffin's.
Franklin County Board of County Commissioners now back in
Aaron,
session.
can you unmute the?
Get it? All right, so this is the first of our 3 scheduled public hearings for today about private property rights, an amendment to the comprehensive plan of Franklin County. So, Attorney Shoulder, what do we need to do to start this? I know it is a public hearing, so we need to take public comment at some point, but.
Well, we should also read the caption of the ordinance. Does someone have a copy of the ordinance? Oh, Mr. Carey. Hello.
This is a ordinance that's required by the state of Florida in the last legislative session. The state passed a law requiring all counties and municipalities to adopt a private property rights element into their comprehensive plan. And they gave language in the statute that said if you pass this language, you're okay. You have the option of writing your own language. I don't see the need for doing that since they already gave us language that if we adopt it, we're in compliance. But this would be an ordinance amending the Franklin County Comprehensive Plan to adopt a goal, objective, and policies for private property rights element as required by Chapter 163.3177, parentheses 6, parentheses I of the Florida statutes. And if you want me to Y'all need more explanation?
It's been duly advertised in the newspaper at least 10 days before the public hearing.
Been advertised, been to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they've given their recommendation. Will be a transmittal hearing. The process was we transmit it up to the state, they review it, send it back. I don't expect any comments whatsoever, and then we'll hold another public hearing to actually adopt it.
Okay, and the ordinance has been on file for public review for the necessary 10-day period?
I think so, yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think at this time we had an adequate summary explanation from Mr. Carrington. He's confirmed that the ordinance has been duly advertised and on file for public review. So at this time, if the board has no questions for Mr. Carrington, it would be appropriate to call for public comment.
I do have one question. Mr. Kern, in discussing this with you, I'd ask about, if there's a timeline for us to adopt this. You said no, there's not really a timeline, but the state has said that we should not do any more land use changes until we adopt it. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Okay. So knowing that this is seemingly to be a preliminary, this will be another time we're going to take action. Where does that leave us with what we have on the agenda following?
What do we have on the agenda following?
Land use change and zoning request change? Unless I'm misunderstanding, didn't you just say that this would have to come back
But these others
for another
are
hearing?
small scale changes, aren't
Okay,
they?
it's just a land use change. I'm just clarifying.
I believe these others are
Okay.
small scale changes
Okay.
that don't have to go to the state for approval.
Sir, we trust you. That's why we have you there.
Okay.
It's all good.
And,
I just wanted to
I got a
clarify.
question. On policy 1-1, it says Franklin County will consider it in its decision-making the right of property owner to physically possess and control his or her interest in the property, including easements, leases, and mineral rights. Now, a lot of different properties you buy around, the original owner retains the mineral rights. Does this exclude that? The former owner retains under the contract when you buy a piece of land that he retains the mineral rights.
Right. I mean,
This says that the person that bought the property now retains those mineral rights. Is that correct?
No. I mean, this does not change anyone's ownership. If you don't own the mineral rights of your property, this does not affect that. I mean, whoever owns the mineral rights still owns the mineral rights.
Okay.
I mean, so, say I bought some property from you and you kept the mineral rights. You still own the mineral rights, I own the property.
Even though you're not the owner, any longer the owner of that property. Once you sell it, you don't own it no more. And this is saying,
But you own the mineral rights. Say I bought some property from you and you kept the mineral rights. I own the property, you own the mineral rights. What it says, the county will take into account my ownership of the property, your ownership of the mineral rights.
Okay.
It doesn't change anything about who owns what.
Okay.
Okay. Any more questions from the board for Mr. Carrington? All right, this time we'll call for public comment. This is a public hearing, so anyone in the room has a right to comment on this proposed amendment to the Franklin County Comprehensive Plan per the Florida legislature. All right, see nobody in the room. Courtney, is there anybody online that would maybe raise their hand and wish to speak?
Yes, I have a Mike Thornburg who has his hand raised.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Mike, you're on the line if you want to unmute. Can you hear us, Mike?
He might still be muted, Courtney.
He's actually unmuted,
On
but we
his
can't
end,
hear
though.
him.
On his end.
Mike, if you can, check to where your mic is coming from. There should be a down arrow beside your mic that says select a microphone, and it should show you where your sound is coming from. Yeah, I got nothing. I can't hear him.
Okay. Anyone else with a raised hand? Courtney?
No, sir, that is all.
Okay. All right, so wish we could get that resolved, but seeing we don't have any public comments, I guess we'll move to the pleasure of the board. Correct, Attorney General?
Yes, sir, and as Mr. Carrington pointed out, the vote would be either to adopt and pass on as a transmittal to the state for their review and return back to the board for comment, or to deny. I would recommend that you would adopt the ordinance as submitted by Mr. Carrington.
Okay. Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to adopt the ordinance as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Ward.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bolt. Any more board discussion before we vote?
Yeah. Mr. Schuler, that man had his hand up. If we make this vote, would that interfere?
Under public comment, I think the board took reasonable action to attempt to allow the gentleman to speak. Courtney, would you make one more effort to see if the gentleman that raised their hand is able to unmute their mic and communicate with the board before they vote?
Yes, sir. Let me try one more time. Mr. Thornburg? Can you try to unmute? We still can't hear you, Mr. Thornburg.
Can we give him a call-in number to call by phone?
Yes. Mr. Thornburg, did you want to try to call in? That number is 301-715-8592.
Courtney, if you'd repeat that.
Okay, that telephone number again is 301-715-8592. You can try to dial in, Mr. Thornburg.
Yeah, I don't have a number for him.
It looks like we just, okay, there we go. Mr. Thornburg, are you at 670-4005?
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to disconnect your audio from your computer.
I just a second.
I love it, right?
Sorry about that. I don't know why when I unmuted my microphone, but the land use change we're talking about is in East Point along the Highway 98 corridor, I assume.
Mr. Thornburg, currently we're actually talking about the private property rights that we're amending the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My computer was acting up and I couldn't get on, so I'll just stay on here for that.
Okay. So
I don't have a on that part. I'm on the land.
Okay, so you have no comment on the comprehensive plan amendment?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. No.
All right, so we did have a motion to approve in a second, correct? All right. Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank
All right, thank you, Mark. We appreciate it, Mr. Carrington. All right, Courtney, proceed. The next will be the land use change.
That is correct.
Okay.
So the first one we have is the land use change for, let me get it pulled up here. An ordinance amending the Franklin County Comprehensive Plan to change the permitted use of a 5.9 acre parcel of land in section 36 Township 8 South, Range 7 West from commercial to residential. I'll zoom in for the map so you guys can see where it's at.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yes.
Hey, Ms. Courtney, it's Michael. For those of us that don't have the section, township, and ranges of the county memorized, where generally is this, I mean, or where is this property located?
This is in East Point off of Bayshore Drive and 98, I think.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think the way this property is configured, it has access to Bayshore Drive, though.
It doesn't look like it. It looks like just 98.
Yeah. It's close in vicinity, but doesn't have access to Bayshore Drive.
Okay. Do the commissioners have any questions for Ms. Courtney Bankston?
No, I don't have any questions about it. Any other commissioners have any questions?
Okay. And Ms. Courtney, for the record, this public hearing was duly advertised at least 10 days ago before today's date?
Correct.
And the ordinance has been on file for public review for at least 10 days prior to today's public hearing?
Correct.
Okay. Commissioners, you're in a procedural position to move forward. The board has indicated it has no further questions, so at this time, public comment would be appropriate.
Okay. So, public comment on this land use change? Anyone in the room? Come up to the microphone, please. If you want to comment, you've got to come up so we can hear you. Yeah, he's going to have it, but we'll do online here in a second. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Thornburg, are you still with us?
I'm here.
All right. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. On the property that we're wanting to change from commercial to residential, which is, I think, part of it's the former KOA campground. Not sure with all the residential property that we have available around the East Point area, why we're taking our commercial property and wanting to turn it into residential. I know probably the buzzword is workforce housing, but there's plenty of options for workforce housing. My other concern is we just received a federal grant, USDA grant, for a feasibility study along the corridor of Highway 98 in East Point, as well as along the waterfront. I would think before we make any land use changes that we would see what they come up with on their feasibility study. We're limited on commercial property as it is. If we take 12 acres from commercial to residential, I'm not sure how we get businesses attracted in here. If we want a large grocery store or something like that along the 98 corridor, we're limiting our resources to attract business. And I understand that they were talking to 15 houses per acre, which would be 90 houses on 6 acres, which is quite substantial. There's a reason that this property was set aside as commercial in the first place. And I just think we ought to consider what we have, and considering that we have plenty of residential property, why we're wanting to take what limited commercial property we have and turn it into residential. That's all I have at this point.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thornburg. Anyone else? Ms. Amy, do you want to speak now? Or? Okay. Okay. Sir, do you have anything you would like to say?
Please, thank you. You know, Mr. Thornburg has a very compelling argument, and I have learned over the years being on this commission how comprehensive the comprehensive land use plan really, really is. There's a lot of thought historically that have gone into that plan. And this again seems to be disobeying that comprehensive plan and perhaps even spot zoning changes with regard to it. I'm remembering about 3 years ago when the comprehensive plan and zoning change was being made relative to that restaurant there coming into East Point called the Pesky Pelican. And there was a spot zoning right there. We approved it. I had voted against it because I thought that it was disobeying comprehensiveness. And 2 restaurants have been in and out of there, and now it's done. Nothing's happening anymore. And it just was remarkable to me when sometimes when we disobey the comprehensive plans, we're really losing sight on what the big picture is. And Mr. Thornburg has talked about this already, that there's a need for commercial availability of property, and I would say leave it alone and don't bother. Don't change this comprehensive plan in this regard for this piece.
Do you want me to read?
Yes, please.
Well, I was going to read the R7 multifamily high density in our ordinance. The district intent is to provide for areas suitable for multifamily dwelling units not to exceed 15 units per acre, and the minimum lot size is 1 dwelling per 2,900 square feet. Just
Right.
as a reference.
Well, I can say this, a couple of things come to mind. It's only been, I don't know, it's been in the last 2 months. We had some people from Commissioner Bolt's district want to change property from commercial to residential, and it was approved. They were changing it from commercial to residential. And I understand from all the discussion being had before today that yes, there is some apprehension in East Point where we're going from commercial to residential. However, if this is the issue is the way it has to be done. You have to do the land use change and the zoning change before you can ever really talk about any kind of site plan. You know, good, bad, and indifferent, I don't know how others feel. We do need workforce housing in Franklin County. And for the sake of making sure everybody knows what I'm talking about, I'll say it again. Workforce housing is going to basically put the property in a land trust. So when somebody buys a house, workforce development, first off, it's going to give priority to security, health industry, people that are viable in our education sector, to your workforce. And if they buy said house, they're not buying an investment, they're getting a place they can afford to live. So if they have it for 10 years and sell it, they can get out of it what they put in it, but the price stays the same. 3 years after it's done, it's now not going from 150 to 250. It's not an investment property, it's for workforce housing. That is a desperate need in this county. However, I don't know that East Point as a whole wants to see this happen on this particular piece of property because it is already zoned commercial. And, you know, I have to clarify it because that's who I represent. I represent everybody. But does anyone have any questions for Mr. Dan? You're here representing them, correct?
I am.
Okay. Come to the podium, please, sir. And, sorry, before we proceed, Commissioner Bolt, you had asked in the middle of, I want to make sure, Courtney, is there anybody else on the line? Because this is a public hearing. I know Mr. Thornburg filled out a card, but he didn't have to fill out a card for a public hearing. Is there anybody else that would have a raised hand or want to speak before we move past public comments? Which would
I
really,
do not have any more raised hands.
okay, which we've kind of already done, and that's on me, but anyway.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Do you want to say something, Ms. Crosby, before? Go ahead. Yeah, we kind of, sorry, we should have stayed at public comment and then moved from there, so.
I just wanted to say in regards to.
Please state your name for the record, sorry.
Amy Crosby.
Okay, go ahead.
In regards to the workforce housing, I mean, we have 2 subdivisions in East Point that are underdeveloped and 2 that were never developed at all.
Mhm.
I just think that should be considered, strongly considered before changing something like a commercial property to residential, develop one of the subdivisions that were never even
Yes, ma'am.
anything other than cleared.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we should be past couple public comments. Go ahead, sir.
Dan Garlick for the applicant, or client, I guess you could say, who owns the land now. I appreciate the comments, and this is one that my client was trying to figure out just the best way to use his property.
Yes.
As you can see, it's an interior lot, what's left. There's storage container, or storage facilities on both sides, and there's just so much storage you can do,
Yes.
whether it's in East Point or anyplace else. He has talked to some different entities about using it for some other type of commercial use, principal use. And he really hasn't anybody that's really been interested in the property other than for more storage units. The issue is that he is also involved and he has many, many employees. They cannot afford even the prices in the subdivisions that are available now because those lots are too large and it takes a lot of money to build those houses. So he came to me at one point and said, what about the workforce issue? And I said, it's commercial and you're going to have to change the land use, you're going to have to change the zoning. And he said, well, that's fine. We're going to build the houses. We need a place to put our employees, and we understand that there's still a need for others in the community, for policemen, for teachers, and what have you, that can't even afford to buy any of these lots in some of these subdivisions. And maybe that's one reason why these subdivisions haven't filled out. I don't know. But basically, that price for those lots in those existing subdivisions is still substantially high for people that are into an entry level or are working for restaurants and what have you. They cannot afford that. So what he's going to do is put up his money to build these units and basically keep it in this workforce housing kind of scenario. I appreciate the issue about spot zoning. This is not really what you'd call traditional spot zoning because if you notice right on the southwest side, that area is zone 1A, R1A. So that residential is actually, what we're looking at is actually adjoining is actually a transitional area to that residential area. So usually when you get in spot zoning, you have a place that it's all commercial and somebody wants a residential spot right in the center, or vice versa, where you got everything's residential and somebody wants to put a dollar store or something like that. So there's a little bit of a difference in that. So it's really not what I'd call spot zoning, or a land use planner wouldn't call it spot zoning. This is ideal because the value of that land for a commercial tract, the value of commercial property is the corridor, the commercial corridor. You'll notice that this guy's got an axis going there. It's a 60-foot wide axis. That's it. So when you go to the interior, the value of that as commercial property is not anywhere near as valuable as it is along Highway 98. So he's kind of got this island of area if what he was trying to figure out what to do with. So we looked at it and said, yes, this is probably not a bad place to do something that would be more in a denser residential thing that you could use for workforce. That's where this whole concept came from. So I sure can understand the commercial the use of commercial property, but in this case here I think it's a little bit different just because of the location of property. You can see what we're talking about there on the aerial. You see in that corner down there, there's a little wetland area. Well,
we did say, maybe we'll see it in a minute. Ms. Courtney, could you put that back over there, please? Yep, that'll work.
You see there's that little kind of a grayish color. There's actually a wetland area that runs through there, and it courses from there all the way down to East Bay. And it really serves as a nice buffer between that multi-residential area and the area that's Las Brisas, which, by the way, are 1/3 acre units. So they're not real big, but they're not an acre. Even those you can't afford to buy in East Point anymore. And that's 1/3 acre. So a big difference. But what I was also going to say is by having that wetland corridor in there, you actually have a nice buffer between the multifamily that we're looking at and those 1A areas that are in Las Brisas. It's not as important, I guess, for the commercial area, but we looked at that as a nice buffer between the two. So you have one already set community, but then you have the other one that has the buffer between it. Again, what we're looking for is something that this guy can bring his workforce in. He needs a place to put them. He's in really dire straits. He has looked around, but there really isn't anything available. And so when we look at this as I'd say an inferior commercial tract because of no frontage, this just seemed to be an ideal place and a good use for it. And that's how we came up with it. And we're looking at, I know the densities that I think somebody mentioned 90 an acre, or you could get 90 on there. There's no way you can. At the max we could get is 30. And because we're going to have infrastructure issues, we got stormwater issues that we talked about before, we've looked at all these things. We can calculate that in, but the max what we would do is 30. And so that's what we're looking at in this particular tract. If there are any other questions about it, I mean, I'll be happy to answer any questions. And I certainly understand the comments and issues, but to me, this seemed like it was a practical use of the property.
Go ahead, sir.
My only comment is too much density. For me, it's too much density. R7 is very high density, 2,900 square foot lot. That ain't much bigger than my house.
Oh, that big.
I mean, it's just too much density compacted onto a 6-acre tract. Having said that, I understand workforce housing, I understand all of that. And I'm also worried about the commercial residential incompatibility in this particular location. So that's my thoughts on it.
The interesting thing about this site is that our density on here is going to be a whole lot less than the storage sheds that are on both sides. Our stormwater runoff is going to be substantially less.
That is not residential living, that's commercial.
Nonetheless, you're talking about density.
Commercial density versus residential density.
Right.
Two different separate animals, you know that as well as I do.
But in a commercial area, you're allowed to have up to 80% cover. You won't have 80% cover here. So the density, I look at density as what's going to run stormwater someplace else. And this is going to be substantially less than it would be for those commercial areas on each side.
It's nothing we ain't been through over the years. Dan, you have your opinion, I have mine. I
No,
stated
but
my opinion. That's all I was doing. I'm not
Yeah.
here to argue the merits or any of that.
Yeah,
I have my opinion, you have your opinion, and that's good. We've
Yeah.
always been able to
Sure.
agree to disagree.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that, you know, yeah, the density is higher than it is in Las Breezes, but if you look at the actual cover impervious area on the surface, this one's going to be substantially less than the commercial areas now, which is going to be less for stormwater runoff. I think that's probably just as important, if not more important, than the density.
Yes.
Can I speak?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Here we go again. Now, this is what I like being a commissioner. Hey, people buy property. They buy property, they don't buy property to look at. They buy property to make something out. Now, it's not a downtown section over there. It's not. It's sitting there now. It's been sitting there ever since KOE lived. That's where it's at, right?
Yeah.
It's been sitting there ever since KO lived. Nobody done nothing with it. We've been hollering about a workforce housing. Somebody coming in and said they want to build some workforce housing. We're against it. I'm not. Hey, I'm like this. People got property right. People who own it want to do it. They're going to put up their money. If somebody else don't want it, they should buy it from the people and do what they want to do with it. But I don't believe in telling somebody what to do with their property. If this is what they want to do, and they gonna do it, let them do it.
Mr. Chairman, I just would like to state that, I mean, yes, we do need workforce housing, and I'm in total agreement with that. However, I don't personally think this is the correct place for it. So with that, I'm going to deny this land use change.
So you make a motion to deny?
Make a motion to deny.
Second.
Sir, are we proceeded to the point we can do that? Just clarifying.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We've taken public comment, we've
Yep.
had the presentation. You haven't made a decision yet. You can still take further presentation and have further comments in discussion amongst the board.
Right.
Members yourselves or with Mr. Garley. That's
Yeah.
up to the board, but
Okay.
he's got his hand up, so I'll
Okay.
say yes.
I don't know if I heard a second.
I don't know if I heard a second yet
Okay,
either.
all right.
Yeah.
So I guess what I need to take to my client is this. If you, I don't know exactly where the board is, but it's not looking good for this, is what I'm seeing this. If he withdraws it, then I mean, how does this affect him coming back with a different plan if he wants to do that? I would think he probably would have the right to come back. I mean, within a year, usually if you have like a variance that's denied, then normally you cannot come back for another year.
The variance time limit of 1 year, I don't think would apply in this case, regardless of whether the land use should be denied or should the applicant withdraw it. I would think that if you're submitting a different plan, it's going to be substantially modified from what you have now, which the board is apparently indicating some concerns about.
Yeah, I think at this time, I think I'd like to withdraw the request. And I'll go back to my client and tell him that this is the consensus that, you know, you're looking at, you want to keep the land as commercial, and he'll have to figure out what he wants to do from that point.
Yeah. Well, I will say this, Mr. Dan. I am still firmly in the corner of workforce housing in this county. It is one of our dire needs. Because, listen, I mean, I have a son that's 22, just got married, they have a 3-month-old baby, other kids at my house. Well, as all the kids in the community that I've been a part of for the last decade with the basketball program at Franklin County. And if we don't have somewhere for our kids to be able to work in this community and afford to live, they will leave. Not every kid's gonna get a $250,000 house. It's simply not gonna happen.
Well, I think the commission is missing an opportunity here, but, you know, it is what it is.
I do too. I think they missed an opportunity. We need some places for these people to live, for young people to live what they can afford. This here, the way I'm hearing it, it's not gonna be them high dollar. I mean, it'll be a house, but no high dollar house. Everybody, and then it'll be a house, nice house, and it's affordable. And it's gonna turn when they leave, it'll be the same thing. But people come up and say, they don't like this, they don't like that. They like to make money, but they don't want to see nobody else make money. Hey, let's get real here, man. This place gonna grow one day. You can't look at other folks' property and tell them what to do with it.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, if I could,
Yes.
is there any other comments from the board?
No, I was just wanting to make sure Mr. Dan heard my comment before, because you withdrew per the applicant.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, he said he thinks he'll withdraw at this time.
I did
ask
say
him
that.
to clarify for the record what he was doing.
Yes.
Well, the impression I get is I got a motion deny in a second. I know that Smokey's not real thrilled about the density, so the best I can do is a 3-2 vote. I'm not a gambler, so I'm withdrawing it.
Well, I mean, Mr. Chairman, as Commissioner Lockley speaking, I haven't heard anything about it. Nobody's told me what these homes are gonna cost. There is no, in other words, you're talking about rezoning and doing a different land use, but no description of what exactly, what's he gonna build, a $50,000 house? Is he gonna build a set? I don't know. All you're asking for is a rezoning and a land use change. What the actual plan is, I don't have a clue.
The problem with it is that.
And if you rezone it and then you do a different land use, I don't know what the plan is. So
No,
what he's saying, I'm not saying anything that tells me anything about what the plan is. All I'm saying is what wants to be rezoned in a different land use. I've seen no plan. So if you withdraw, Dan, and you want to come back with something that's actually got teeth in it,
I've got a
I can
plan.
actually see what's going to happen is one thing, but just to rezone it and do a different land use with no information, you know, there ain't no way I can even consider that.
Can I approach the board?
That's up to the chairman.
That's fine. I mean, you've already withdrawn, so.
Well, we're still the board hasn't concluded the public hearing,
Okay, so
there's still a dialogue going on. Would be,
Okay.
as you call me, the parliamentarian. I would say, well, he's
You are the
going to see where this discussion goes and then make a decision. Is what I'm sensing. If everybody would,
if you want to see, come up so you
Ms.
can see
Amy?
what's being presented.
if you want to come look too, come look.
This is about as far as we've got because we just weren't sure about the, I mean, as you know, it costs a lot of money to really do a good plan, but we know that we stormwater, and we know we need these units in here, but this is the way the units would sit. This is the first draft we got. And what we're looking at here is the way, like, here's your access going in. We were actually looking at a one-way route, so we make it more of a park area in here. This is the wetland area we have over here. We've got a 50-foot setback and we're used for stormwater management. And that's just pretty much how those lots would look, and then basically we would fit the units on there. The units they're talking about are prefab, so you're probably looking at, I'd say, less than $100,000 per unit to put it up. That's what they're doing. They're putting money up to make these things, so they're putting money up there. They want the people to come in and actually rent these places. And then those that have surplus, they'll put it on the market and sell those out to you. And that's the plan.
That kind of looks like skinny mini.
Well, 2,900 square feet.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, and like Commissioner Ward, I don't think this is the place for that. Having said that, we do need workforce housing.
Yes.
Why this piece?
Because they own it.
So this current,
So the person who currently owns it wants to do this. He doesn't want to sell it.
No, he wants to build, he has to build, he's got a bunch of this, the guy that owns the Gibson. So he's got many employees, there's no place to put them. He needs at least 15 units and he's willing to put up another, there's about 30 altogether, so he can put more into the market.
right. So in that potential plan, it would put it pretty much on the backside of the property.
Oh yeah, the whole thing is on the backside, you can see back there, you won't even see it from the road, the only thing you can see from the road is the driveway going on.
So is he planning on keeping the rest of it? Well, it's all been cleared though, hasn't it?
No.
Okay, is he planning on keeping the rest of it wooded?
Barnes that has that corner up there, it's all, at this point, it's already into storage sheds.
Right.
So this part's still, he's bush on it back there.
Okay. Okay.
So I mean, this is our start, but it's tough to be able to go any further unless you know that the zone's going to change. And I told the guy, after talking to Ricky over time to time, there's controversy in the neighborhood, and I certainly understand that. The guy's just putting his best foot forward. If you like it, it's great. If you don't, I mean, I can come in. The second part of this would be is coming in with a preliminary plat. So at that point there is when you probably have your chance to look and see if these lots are too small or bigger. That's understandable.
Well, I mean, you already understand that from me, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
I want a bigger lot.
Well, that's just it, and so that's.
No, you can't do as many units.
Right.
But you have something there that you could.
But and he'll get anything he can because he's really desperate. He can't get anything.
Well, I'm not trying to push a man to desperation. I'm just stating my opinion. You know what I'm saying?
They have this piece of land and they're ready to move forward.
So question, they're going to be prefab houses and obviously that would be long and skinny, so are we talking, this is going to be trail park?
No, you can't have trailers in.
I mean, if it's residential, it's a mobile
It'd have to be
home.
at least DCA approved.
Yes.
Those are not trailers.
Don't want modular.
Yeah.
Okay, so a trailer that you put a cement foundation.
No, again, you can't have trailers.
It's the same thing, modular home's the same thing.
I beg to differ with you, but.
According to the federal government, it is different. I don't know what the differences are, but they won't put a sticker on something that's just a mobile home. We've had this problem before.
Speaking generally,
Yes.
modular homes are built to the Southern Building Code, the Florida Building Code standards. Trailers are built to basically the federal HUD standards, which is a lesser standard.
So it's a step up for sure. Yeah, it's not a stick built house, but this is another one too that has some lots of a little bit larger. These are around 4,500. And we don't get as many, but that's another layout that we have. And you can see that we had to limit some because there's a wetland in the corner back there. We can't do the wetlands, so we lost that.
Right here.
So would that be the same potential prefab design though?
I don't know. I mean, it's just, what he's told me so far is he wants to do DC built kind of things because he can get them out there quick.
I don't know about that. Ain't nothing moving right quick
Yeah,
in
that's true,
supply.
too.
There ain't nothing moving quick.
And you can understand now
Yes.
where he's going to be on down the road even longer.
Yes.
Because of the way that things are now.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing. It's if this enlightens more, if this makes more sense to you, then if the zoning change makes sense, then we'd be looking at a preliminary plat, coming back with a preliminary plat. At that point there, we can look at it and say, are these lots too big, too small? law, pretty much it's your personal.
Why would he buy a piece of commercial property and want to do?
He's owned it.
I understand that. He ain't always owned it. He had to buy it from somebody. He had to buy it from somebody. And he bought commercial property and wants to turn it into residential. Right.
He had some land here, he went into commercial, it's actually a secured storage LLC is the name.
Okay.
And he did sell for
Right.
a bunch of storage stuff for,
Right.
Chris Marr.
Right.
So he's put the property up as far as size goes, and to the one parcel from originally purchased it.
That's what the people wanted, and of course they wanted the frontage, which is the most valuable part.
That wasn't the question. He was okay with splitting that one big parcel up into smaller parcels after he purchased it.
Sure, he did it.
Well, who cares how what the entrance is? You did actually did you want to turn it?
He has the right to do that.
Right, absolutely. But as far as the access and using that as an argument, that he's only got that apartment. He thought about that before he rezoned it.
No, he didn't. He wasn't intending, he was intending to do more storage back in here. But then he ran into the issue of not having any place for his workforce. So that's.
Well, he's got a whole section of downtown Apalachicola. Why can't one of those buildings be an apartment complex? We're talking use the property he's already got.
Yeah.
He's got the building, he's got the
It's
property, put 'em in
definitely a
there.
bigger lift to try to do that in Apalachicola.
Oh, yeah.
You have a hard time cutting the tree limit in the city of
We're
Appalachia.
talking about buildings that are already standing, that are multiple rooms, that are a hotel.
Yeah.
And he's built up that whole block to be a giant hotel,
They
an
don't want
attraction.
nothing around.
Fine, make one section of that big giant hotel part of your workforce.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it's not cost effective to do it in that way.
No, because then you're also gonna have,
I just wanted to address,
Well, like again, the idea was to have available for people, for whatever workforce we have, whether it's in school, police, or whomever, there's gonna be like half of these gonna be available to, and again, we're ahead of the game because I don't even know what we're doing with zoning or the commercial market. This is what we're looking at, so it's just a matter of how y'all feel about it.
okay, just wanted to address the issue about trailers being allowed or not allowed on the property. R7 is limited to either single-family dwellings or multifamily dwellings. Then any use that's not specifically or provisionally permitted herein is prohibited. That's a fancy way of saying trailers aren't allowed. Then in terms of, yeah, modular homes would be, and they're allowed anywhere in any residentially zoned. Believe me, we've had that discussion. I've looked at that very carefully with the board. Yes, and the modular was allowed, not necessarily Magnolia Ridge. I'm thinking on South Bay Shore years ago, someone was putting in a modular in the neighborhood, just got very concerned about it. I got involved working with Mr. Pierce. We looked at it carefully then, many years ago, and the lobbyists for the modular industry are really successful, and we don't have the ability to keep a modular out of a residentially zoned area. They're built the Southern Building Code. We have no choice but to accept it. And in terms of, the location in the county where you can have R7 multifamily high density, the footnote says that this district shall only be established in an urban service area, and East Point is our only USA in the entire county. So it's not like this is going to be spread out beyond other areas. It's limited to the East Point USA. And it does require that you be serviced by central sewer and central water. So, and again, that's only provided by the county in East Point. So
Is the whole East Point an urban service area, or is there boundaries there?
their boundary line basically goes to Highway 65 back this
it's
direction.
the whole area. Yeah, it's the whole area, basically from Bay Shore to 98.
And
Or to
I'm
65.
very confident Mark wouldn't have allowed the application to even be processed if it was outside the USA. Anyway, I just want to answer that question since it was brought up about trailers.
All right. So, sir, if you have withdrawn, I'm sure we'll be hearing from you in the future.
Yeah, that's why I was on your part, so that you can come back with a revised project.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
But I ain't never seen the work do it. You got, it can't be too many people against it, ain't but one person here. I heard 2 people against it. So I guess the whole other people for it. We gonna deny this? Come on, let's get real.
We actually didn't follow through with the motion or a vote. Commissioner Lockley, Mr. Garlick withdrew on behalf of the applicant. Is that correct?
Could I rescind that request and table this and bring you a site plan?
Don't know. Attorney Short, I think it's a question for you.
Can I rescind my withdrawal and table it and bring a site plan to the commission? Would that give more enlightenment?
Yeah, I mean,
If
we're in the middle of a.
If you rescind your withdrawal, we're in the middle of a motion and a vote.
Yes, you are.
So that's where we'd be procedurally at. If you don't want to rescind or withdraw, that's up to you. But we already have a motion and a second, so that's where we'd be at.
But the commission could withdraw and request a table.
They could, but that's up to the commission.
I understand.
There's been a lot of discussion and statements of intent, but no board action has been taken, and the public hearing is not concluded. So I would tend to think if the applicant wants to rescind their withdrawal and then plead their case to the board in terms of whatever it is he's going to ask the board to do, then I think he could do that. If we had already taken a vote and made a decision and closed the public hearing, then I think all bets would be off. But the public hearing is still live and active, and then the discussion is ongoing.
So to clarify what we're doing here, though, we have a motion and a second.
To
so
deny.
that's where we're moving to next.
That's
correct.
correct.
Unless they want to rescind their motion.
That is correct.
I was going to say, I'm sorry, go ahead, Attorney Shore. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll rescind my motion to deny, and I will give you and the applicant an opportunity to come back with a site plan and give you a second chance to plead your case.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Could
I'll
you
do
make
the
the
same in a
original
second.
motion? I made
She
the
did.
original motion.
She did. Do you rescind your second, Commissioner Bolt?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay.
I'm going to be in the Indian Ocean in November. So could I have this, could we do a date certain to December, or is that asking too much?
I would prefer for something of this nature. I mean, the board could, and it is the board's choice, you could table to a date, time, and place certain and not re-advertise, but I would tend to think re-advertising would seem appropriate in this case.
So if you're going to be gone in November, I think the next time we would be able to do this kind of, we usually do our public hearings the second meeting of the month, so it'd be the second meeting in December.
Does that work?
Yeah, that'd be great. I really appreciate that. Yeah. It gives me a little time for, get back to my clients and everything too, so that would be.
So
okay.
even with that being stated, I still think we need to re-advertise in the paper and everything. I'm not for just us doing the date, time, and place, because if something happens.
Yeah. My guy's got to pay extra money, he's willing to do it,
No.
so.
The newspaper appreciates that.
Yeah, I bet. Thank you very much.
Wait, we haven't had a motion to table. We've had a withdrawal of the motion and the second to deny, but there's been no motion to table.
Motion to table.
Okay. Motion to table by Commissioner Lockley.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ward.
And just for the record, the tabling is the second meeting in December at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, but will also be advertised in the newspaper a further time.
Okay. And even though I'm apprehensive, I will ask, is there any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of tabling?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously.
Thank you, Lee.
All right, that concludes that public hearing, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, up next, Ms. Erin Griffith.
Okay, Commissioners, item A, at tonight's meeting, the board approved and authorized the chairman to sign the supplemental grant award from the Florida Department of Transportation to fund the project cost overage from the bid opening for the LAP CR 370 Alligator Drive multi-use tap project. The formal acceptance process also required that the board adopt a resolution to reflect a new total grant award of $533,401. Board action to adopt the attached resolution accepting the supplemental agreement and authorizing the chairman to sign.
So moved.
Aaron, turn your mic on.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Item B, at the June 1st meeting, the board authorized staff to proceed with negotiations with AECom Technical Services as the top-ranked firm during the RFQ process for construction, engineering, and inspection services. And that's for that same Alligator Drive multi-use path project. There was a delay in awarding any of this work until we actually had the formal funding in place for the agreements. Now that the project is fully funded, the board can proceed with issuing a notice of award. Board action to accept the cost estimate and authorize the chairman to sign the attached notice of award to AECom Technical Services.
So move.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lockley. Any discussion from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
At the August 24th meeting, the board opened bids for the construction portion of the CR 370 Alligator Drive multi-use path project, and Pygott Asphalt and Site Work LLC was the lowest responsive bidder for the project at $479,678. Now that this project is fully funded, the board can also proceed with issuing a notice of award for the construction portion. Board action to approve and authorize the chairman to sign the attached notice of award to Pygott Asphalt and Site Work LLC.
So move.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion?
Just thank you very much for that.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That is a 5-0 vote.
Item D, at the September 21st, 2021 meeting, the board authorized staff to negotiate with County Engineer Dewberry and Associates to provide design services for the two CR 67 Small County Road Assistance projects through the Florida Department of Transportation. The attached proposals for Phase 2 is for the design of the road section from the Crooked River Bridge to State Forest Road 166 for $153,610. And the attached proposal for Phase 3 is for the design from State Forest Road 166 to State Forest Road 172 for $142,069. Board action to approve the attached proposals and authorize the chairman to sign the agreements.
So move.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Bolt.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Ward. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous vote.
Okay, item E, the Small County Outreach Program SCOP CR 30A, a 5.3-mile widening and resurfacing project from US Highway 98 to the entrance of 13-mile Oyster House, is now ready to proceed with advertising for bids. The project will include restriping, shoulder stabilization, culvert extensions, and 5-foot paved shoulders on the sides of the roads. Board action to authorize advertising for bids for the C30A widening and resurfacing project.
So moved.
We have a motion for approval by Commissioner Parrish, second by Commissioner Lockley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, item F, as part of the Franklin County budget process, the supervisor of elections included a request for ADA voting equipment as an urgent need within 1 year on the capital improvement schedule for her office. The ADA compliant equipment must be in place in 2022. In the supervisor's budget allocation, only the operating expense relative to the ADA equipment was included. As this was a large capital outlay item, it is best for the board to purchase this equipment outright from the capital outlay fund in lieu of increasing the annual budget allocation to the supervisor's office for the equipment. Board action to approve the payment of the attached sales agreement for ADA accessible voting equipment from the sole source provider, Election System Software, from the capital outlay fund.
Got the price on it? What you cost?
$35,500.
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lockley, second by Commissioner Parrish. Any discussion?
You have the money? You've got the money?
We do.
Okay.
I will say too, with discussion, this is the way we should be doing it anyway. It needs to come out of capital and not be added to a budget.
Yeah.
That, 5 years down the road would still be in the budget.
Correct.
Okay.
And not be a need. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, Commissioners, and I would like to continue with Michael Marone's report, item B, if we can pick up there.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. This is relative to the legislative funding request. Recently, the board discussed submitting a legislative funding request for construction of a new emergency operations center for this legislative session. At your last meeting, Michael informed the board that Senator Osley recently visited Weems and indicated support for a new facility at Weems. Based on a discussion with Mr. David Walker, the Weems CEO, Michael was able to confirm that Senator Osley would support a legislative funding request. Knowing that, Michael requested that Ms. Tracy Busby start the process of creating 2 applications for legislative funding. The first would be a $2.5 million request for a new emergency operations center, and the other would be a $7 million request for a new facility at Weems. The applications are due to Senator Osley and Representative Schoaf's offices by November 1st. If the board has any additional funding requests, Ms. Busby would need some direction today so that the application could be prepared and submitted prior to the November 1st deadline. Franklin County's legislative delegation meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, November 10th at 5:00 p.m. here in your meeting room. Board action to authorize Ms. Tracy Busby to prepare and submit legislative funding requests for $2.5 million for a new emergency operations center, $7 million for a new facility at Weems, and any other requests the board may decide on this morning.
All right, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Lockley. Second by Commissioner Parrish. Any discussion?
Do we want to think of any other funding opportunities?
Well, I don't know about funding opportunities, but I would like to, in discussion, ask, we've submitted these 2 FERDAP grants. It'd probably really help us in this process if Senator Osley would support those as well during the process. That's something Ms. Tracy maybe could talk, you know what I'm saying, or is there a way to submit that? Because we're not asking for, I guess we are asking for funding, but it's not the same as these other 2 requests.
Yeah, we could actually mention that the 2 grants had been submitted and
Right.
request for, their
Okay.
assistance in getting them through.
Yeah, then I think that would be a good thing to do.
And this keeps us focused on certainly 2 entities, EOC and the hospital, and we speak in the same chorus on all of that when we see them next November.
Yeah.
It's easy to think about.
And I will amend my motion to what you.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay, so the motion has been amended. Who made the second? You made the second?
Yeah.
Made your second, okay.
Okay, good.
All right, so the motion's been amended, the first and the second, to include the FERDAP grants. Also to be something Ms. Busby talks to our legislative delegation about, as well as us. Any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's unanimous.
Item C is the FWC executive order. I know we did discuss this briefly when Mr. Davis was here, and it is actually attached to the report. Attached is an FWC executive order sent to Michael from FWC's Northwest Regional Director, Mr. Billy Sermon. This executive order is intended to assist the county if additional cleanup measures are needed. It also temporarily suspends bag and size limit, season and area closures, and selected methods to take for certain species of dead marine organisms. And that is in regards to the beach cleanup for red tide. And then you also had informational items, which was already covered by Mr. John Solomon. And then there was also a letter received from Mr. Michael Clarkson, a letter thanking the board and other county agencies for what was done to help and assist a family member involved in an accident in the county. And then also included as an informational item was the forestry annual report, which was attached for your review. And that concludes Michael Marone's report.
Well, I don't know whether you know it or not. Tim, can I?
Yes, go ahead.
Do our people have some kind of respirators on when they working on that red tide? Just masks?
I don't think they do. I think what they've been doing, Commissioner, is working no longer than an hour at a time. They've not been, I'm pretty sure that's what Mr. Davis had communicated to me, that they weren't just out there working hours on end. They're getting out there with a tractor and several people and trying to cover an area and be done with that. You know what I mean? Is what they've been doing.
Yeah, if that tractor got an air conditioner, it's all right, but when them on the ground, that's what I'm concerned about.
Yes, sir.
It's dangerous.
But that is something, Aaron, maybe if we can clarify what's being done.
Yep.
And just let the board know.
Okay.
If we can find out.
They need to wear some kind of protection.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Careful.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to insert a conversation at this point relative to this hemp fiber processing plant that we've talked about. I heard you loud and clear that there are still some questions with regard to that. And I'm thinking, though, to recognize the questions that we have, that I would like Franklin County to consider being interested in being the lead entity and working with Appalachia Regional Planning Council, along with the Economic Development Administration, to submit a planning grant to the Appalachia Regional Planning Council and be the entity, Franklin County be the entity with regard to partnering with Appalachia Regional Planning Council in the planning grant entity. The spirit of the planning grant is to get those answers as well. And it puts Franklin County right in position for a potential new place to find jobs for people as we look at this.
We do have that potential, but Commissioner Bolt, the reason it wasn't submitted in the last grant that was done, even the basic checklist of things, and I don't mean to sound this way, but even the basic checklist of things that the Regional Planning Council is going to ask on behalf of all the counties it represents, they never received those answers. So until Sunshine Hemp or whoever else it is wanting to I'll put it this way. For the Regional Planning Council, they're still not considering where they would place them because they haven't finished filling out the application they would need to then try to partner with a county from this region.
So there's an order. The application still needs comprehensive filling out first before we talk about partnering.
Yes, because you don't know. There's so many unknowns. You're just.
I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we can state intent. That's fine. We're part of the region that Appalachia Regional Planning Council encompasses.
Sure.
But until it didn't, even if it wasn't Sunshine Hemp, if we were trying to pursue something like that, there's a basic checklist of this is what they're actually looking to do.
Okay.
This is the kind of operation they're wanting to have before you ever try to find compatible land use and actually move, with partnering someone.
Sure. Okay.
We're missing valuable parts of the information is all I'm saying.
That's what the council is missing, and they want
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yes.
I do want to just call you guys' attention to this position paper with regard to this hemp processing plant. I think it's modern, up to date. Relative to the fact that we have this one industry in Franklin County left, and that's tourists, and you've taught us that could blow away with the next storm. This is another way of wide basing our opportunities for getting people back to work. So I want to keep it alive if we can.
Yes, you can, Commissioner, go ahead.
See that? The same thing we talked about that morning will come up again. If a company come in here, like that company, they ain't got no way to stay. But if people, if we ain't got enough people here,
you're right.
If we don't have enough people here to work and do the job, and they got to bring people in, we ain't got no way for them to stay.
I couldn't agree with you more.
We got to work.
I know
on
what
it.
you're saying.
It's gonna be hard to get a company in here.
So I'm sure, Commissioner Bolt, this might come up at a future time.
Sure.
When it's a lot more information provided.
Okay.
And that would probably be adequate.
Okay, good. Thank you. I just had one other point I wanted to ask, if I may. Thank you. Relative to the relocation of the EOC, and we've discussed this many times, I don't want to come across as pestering, but I continue to believe, particularly since we've just heard about floodplain changes relative to the airport, that we need to be thinking ahead about where we locate that EOC. We're already looking at money for design and planning, and potentially we're asking for money for building. It seems to me that EOC belongs up there on Route 65 right next to the sheriff's office for continuity, consistency, intra-departmental relationships. Yes, I do remember you teaching us about all that storage area that we would so-called abandon at the airport. I don't think we would abandon it at all. It could be a secondary auxiliary depot. And I want us to consider favorably relocating that EOC up there on 65 on that piece of ground that tentatively the school board is going to give us right next to the sheriff's department. Here's a good example. I learned from a 911 person.
Wrap this up, please?
Yeah.
Because we voted 5-0 and you voted for putting it by the airport, so I just want to clarify that.
I voted for it not to be at the airport.
No, sir. I don't believe so. But go ahead.
I'd like it to be on 65, and I'd like us to consider it to be there.
Right. And I think if that were a reality and something we could do, it has yet to be built anywhere.
Truly. But
So
the planning
I
is
don't know
being
why.
asked.
I'll let you finish.
I just wanted to know, aren't we already allocating money for planning? And when we know where it needs to be, we need to know elevations and where it's going to be in order to plan what that footprint of that building looks like. And we need to make a decision once and for all about where that EOC is going to locate.
That decision's already been made, sir.
I'd like to see
By
it
a
changed.
vote of this board.
Okay.
So unless you're going to bring some new information forward that we don't presently have, again, at the end of the day, all of us are making decisions with what's in front of us at the time.
Okay, I respect that.
None of us have full knowledge. Nobody that lives in this county has full knowledge of what our tomorrows hold for us. But by a vote of this board, we've already voted on this issue. This makes now the fourth time you've brought it up, ad hoc, not on the agenda, not something that, you know, people like Miss Donna that's here in the audience, she wants to see it on the agenda if this board is going to talk about it, and especially if this board's going to consider taking some kind of action. It needs to be done that way so people can know and expect a reasonable plan of action from this board. So it's not on the agenda. So the fact that you would even call for us to vote on it or do something different, it's not on our agenda. And if you want it to be on the agenda, come with something that changes why the board should consider it, new information. I mean, listen, I'm from East Point. I grew up in East Point. But that doesn't mean I need to fight about everything that doesn't include East Point on this board. I mean, that's the reality of life. So if we can come up with some reason why it'd be more advantageous to us other than someone thinks so, or someone's would like to see it, you know, not be around Appalach. I mean, those are not valid reasons, I'm sorry.
I understand.
Those are not logistically valid reasons. This board voted, and if you say you voted against it, I thought you voted for it, but if you did, it was probably a 4-1 vote. So that means everybody else here voted to keep it by the airport because the fact that an airport is located there. And it's still close enough to a federal highway that has access to go east and west. I mean, there were reasons why we decided to keep it by the airport. Number one being was it was a recommendation from our EOC director that they wanted to see it remain by the airport. So if we're not going to go with the recommendations from our staff, if we're just going to go and do, you know, what is our reasoning behind going against a recommendation from the person that works under us, a department that answers to us as a board, what would be our reason to change that? Other than somebody would like to see it in the center and not on one side.
Okay.
I mean, those are things that are valid to consider is all I'm saying.
Okay.
And if I'm coming across as, I'm not trying at all, Commissioner Bolt, to talk down to you. I respect you. I think you're a valid part of this board, so please don't take that from us because that's not what this is intended to be.
It's the spirit of education. I appreciate that.
Well, it's not what it's intended to be, but if it's something we're going to bring up and we potentially think we want to take action on, it needs to be agendized. It needs to be put on the agenda. Is all I'm saying. Attorney Schuler, you're next, sir.
Commissioners, it has recently come to my attention that FEMA is considering making some elevation amendments which could affect both the Franklin County Airport and the airport over in the city of Carabel. We're on a 90-day clock that started on October the 14th. I'm requesting today board authorization to look into this matter, report back to you with some findings as to what may or may not be the adverse impacts on these two airports, and also to bring back for your consideration at the next meeting one or more firms to hire to potentially challenge the FEMA map elevations that are being proposed. They are not adopted yet. They're in the process of being proposed officially.
So let me clarify something, Attorney Schuler.
Yes, sir.
So FEMA, I know they occasionally update their map.
Yes, sir.
They're proposing map updates for Franklin County, and the only updates that are proposing involve areas that has both our airports in it.
It includes at least those two areas. This is very new information to me.
Okay.
It includes areas outside of the airports. I
Right.
do know that much.
Okay.
Exactly how much property outside the airports, I do not know. But right now, the proposed changes are going to, in my opinion, have the potential to materially adversely affect both airports by placing them into a floodplain or otherwise increasing an existing floodplain that exists on one or more of these airports. For example, when I spoke to your floodplain administrator this morning at the Apalachicola Airport, presently she showed me a map where all of our buildings and hangars are outside of a floodplain under the current adopted map. Under the proposed maps, all of those structures and your runways as well would be added and included within a floodplain. Potentially, she had mentioned her concern about potential adverse impacts on eligibility for grants and also development. Although this is a new issue and it was not on the agenda or on my report, I was like, oh boy. But this is very time sensitive. We only have 90 days for the board to review this and make a decision whether or not to challenge the FEMA map proposals. So I'm asking for this authority to move forward and bring back to you at a future meeting, hopefully the first meeting in November, additional information so that you can make a decision whether you want to move forward with challenging these map amendments.
Okay. So given what you're asking, before we move forward, can I call for public comment?
Yes, sir.
About this matter? Is anyone in the room that wants to comment on this matter? Because it was not on our agenda. It is something, and the only reason I'm proceeding this way, per your recommendation, Attorney Schuler, is because of the time sensitivity
Very time
of this matter. Anyone in the room like to comment on this publicly? Ms. Courtney, can you check and see if there's anyone still attending by Zoom that might want to comment or might raise their hand to speak about this?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. So if you are attending by Zoom and you would like to speak, we would like to hear from you at this time.
Nope, no hands raised.
Okay, and again, the only reason we're doing this, it wasn't on the agenda, but it is a time sensitivity matter.
Very
Yes,
much
sir.
so, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to comment on this issue because as Attorney stated, we have 90 days, but we need to get a firm on board.
Mm-hmm.
By the time that happens 2 weeks from now we're 30 days into that period. That firm needs to be on board to establish a case for us before the 90 days is up so they can file an appeal with FEMA before this actually becomes law. So
Yes.
I agree with us trying to move forward, and I do agree that it's going to be detrimental to the airport as a whole as far as it comes to getting grants and other things, because they're not going to grant you grants to improve something in the flood zone.
No.
I mean, the only mitigation is to raise all of the runways. I mean, it's just going to be ridiculous, especially when you're talking about, as you said earlier, extending one runway to 8,000 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's all in the flood zone, you ain't gonna get the money to do that.
Nope.
So it's not gonna happen. So we need to fight this thing, and not counting all the buildings. You can't build any more T-hangers because they're all gonna be flooded. You know, in that flood zone, they're not gonna give you the money to build any more T-hangers because you ain't made to park a plane in them. You know, it's a host of issues. I don't know why. From what I'm understanding, the airport is at 20 feet elevation. There's very few places in Franklin County that is at 20 feet elevation. How does it end up in a flood zone? I mean, something just don't seem right
Yeah.
as far as them even putting those runways and all in a floodplain at that kind of elevation. Doesn't make any sense to me. I agree with what the attorney's saying. I think we need to move forward. I'm gonna make a motion that we direct the attorney to move forward and bring the information back to this board at the next board meeting as far as the firms go and what the cost will actually be to have somebody represent us in this action.
Okay. So we do have a motion to approve what Attorney Schuler's recommended and asked for here today. We did receive public comment. Since it wasn't on the agenda, there was no public comment. Commissioner Parrish has made a motion to approve. Commissioner Lockley has made a second. Any more discussion from the commission before we vote?
Yeah, I got to say one. I don't understand this. I mean, this thing, that airport, I know this one out here. I don't know about the one in Carrollville. This airport out here was built back in the war. And now they talking about this in a flood zone. But the military had it back. They ain't mention no flood zone. I don't know what's going on. Kind of just seemed crazy to me, but we'll see.
All right, any more discussion before we vote? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That's a 5-0 vote. Anything else, sir?
Just as a comment on the record, we've had 2 500-year floods in Apalachicola in the last
Yes.
30 years. That airport didn't flood.
No.
We had a Category 5 hurricane hit 30 miles away. It didn't flood from storm surge, so
Yeah.
something's not right in this preliminary map, and it needs to be looked at very carefully.
Well, that's what we're trusting is going to happen, so that.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That was the 5-0 vote, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I had already sent to the board last week email updates on various issues. For example, on the straw ballot on St. George Island. Did the board have any questions for me on that update in terms of a public presentation, or does the board want to address that issue at this time? Same thing on the opioid settlement funds, the Carabel Beach flagging ordinance that'll be heard at the first meeting in November. Any questions about those informational items?
I think we're good. We're just waiting for the public hearings for the ordinance and the presentation. I mean, I think we're good. Do y'all?
Okay.
Commissioners?
Very good. Well, that, Mr. Chairman, then concludes my report to the board.
Okay. Any commissioners' comments?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of straw ballot for the incorporation of St. George Island.
Well, I just don't, straw ballot ain't gonna get you nowhere. That's the whole, you know what I mean? It's,
From everybody I've talked to over there, they're not in favor of it. I don't know who is bringing out the moving forward with it, but I don't think they've been here a long time. All your long-time people that's lived on the island, and probably not from Franklin County, but been here a long time, don't want, I mean, they don't want the incorporation, they don't want the additional taxes it's gonna take to incorporate. You know, there is some hesitancy as to what the county board does sometimes, but I don't think it's enough that they want to go out and do their own thing and pay additional taxes. And it's just, everybody I talked to says it's not viable.
yeah. Well, Attorney Schuler, I'll ask you this and then we'll go on from there.
Yes, sir.
Can we check and see, in state statutes, doesn't there have to be a certain number of residents to even be able to consider yourself as a city?
Yes, sir.
For a geographic location? Doesn't it have to have a certain population?
Yes, sir. I did look at the municipal incorporation ordinance, or excuse me, state statute, not county ordinance. And there are certain requirements that I really just don't think that the people seeking incorporation are going to be able to satisfy. One of which is a population requirement. I believe the minimum required population is 1,500. I checked with Mr. Carrington, who is our planning and zoning director, as to what the last census showed as the population on St. George Island, which would be the 2020 census, and they have, according to that, 990 individuals on St. George Island. So they can't check that box off on the state statute. There's also a population density requirement of 1.5 persons per acre. I asked Mr. Carrington to again look at that population data and make some assumptions. For example, if you were to incorporate all of St. George Island but exclude the state park, they have, I believe it was 0.14 persons for the density, which means they don't satisfy the 1.5 persons per acre density. If you were to include all of the island from East Pass to the cut, which would by definition include the state park, then their population density drops down, I believe it's to 0.12 persons per acre, which again means they cannot satisfy that statutory criteria of 1.5 persons density per acre. There's a provision of the state law that allows for incorporation if you don't meet that density threshold. If there are extraordinary circumstances requiring incorporation, But when I did my research, I cannot locate any case where a city has been incorporated under that extraordinary authority.
Okay.
So I think that they frankly would fail to meet, a number of the criteria in the municipal incorporation statute, which I believe are mandatory. You have to meet all of them. You can't just meet one or two. You have to meet all of them in order to qualify.
Okay. Well, ahead of whenever they're going to be on the agenda to present, I guess if you would, could you make sure to include that information and send it to all those board members? So it would have all the things you just enumerated.
Yes, sir.
Sounds good.
I'll do it. Yes, sir.
All right. Anyone have any questions or concerns for Turner Shore before we go forward? Commissioners' comments?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. I
Yes.
just want to remind the public about the ARPC's code enforcement workshop tomorrow night at the East Point Fire Station. It's from 5 to 7 p.m. I just want to encourage the public that has any ideas or concerns, comments, questions to come out and take part in this workshop.
And then there's also going to be one, when is it, the beginning of November?
It's November the 3rd
Yeah,
at
it's
St.
going to be
George Island.
different dates, but it's all across the county.
So November 3rd at St. George Island at the St. George Island Fire Department. November the 10th, it's going to be for unincorporated Carabel in the City Commission Room. And then Lanark Village is November 17th in a location to be determined. And then an unincorporated Apalachicola workshop is going to be December the 1st here in the Commission meeting room.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes.
Could the county staff advertise that there may be more than one commissioner in attendance at these things?
We need to, yes.
Good.
Because other than that, we can't attend, right?
That's exactly right.
Procedurally,
I've been thinking I might want to go to some others across the county and not just the one in unincorporated Appalachia. I may want to go to the island. I may want to go to East Point. I mean, you never know where I might show up. But if it's not advertising, we can't. Only the commissioner of that district can show up.
But Attorney Schuler, you might can answer this question. Since this is not being put on by the board or by the county, it's ARPC. Does that preclude that law?
Preclude what?
I
mean, can more than one of you
Yes,
attend?
yes.
Yes, you do need to advertise. I strongly recommend that. And if one or more commissioners are present at any of those meetings, even though your presence is going to be advertised, my advice is that you don't speak with one another during that meeting. You can attend, but do not speak with one another. That's basically all the requirements of the Sunshine Law, which is you can't have more than one of you in one spot talking public business when you're not, frankly, here.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you. I wanted to just comment about the Lanark Village St. Teresa Fire Department relative to some of the alleged impairments that have occurred there in that department. Just so the public knows that these issues are contained, they're defined, and they're being managed. There is no out of control at the Lanark Village Fire Department. I've attended their meetings and sat in the background. We're not micromanaging at all, just listening, and I see them building their bolster and getting better as time goes on. So the volunteers are managing themselves, and these issues are, as I said, managed and contained and defined, and they're being worked on. And it makes the fire department better as a result of that.
Any more commissioners' comments? All right, we're adjourned.